Welcome to What the F Midlife, the unfiltered space where we talk about what it really means to grow, change, and maybe even come a little undone in midlife. I'm Chrissie Morgan, and I'm here with my co-host, Marva Silva. We come from different walks of life, but like you, we're deep in the thick of figuring out how to actually thrive through all this change. So today, we're talking about one of the hardest truths to face. If you don't love yourself, your relationships will mirror that back to you. So grab a cup of coffee, a journal, maybe a tissue, and let's get into it. So we're going to begin by talking about what self-love actually means.
Okay. Let's do it.
Yeah, it's like more than just the bubble baths and the affirmations and the manifestations, but when you do the work, like, what is it to try to get to a place of self-love?
Yeah.
What is it for you?
What is it for me? That's a great question because I'm still figuring that out.
I think it never ends.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
It just shifts as we go. We get more clear. We gain clarity on something, and then we build on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess what I figured out since I started this journey, and I don't want to sound corny, but there's just no other way to say it. It's a journey, And I think I started to realize that I just wasn't being very nice to myself, that I was just extremely critical of myself. I was really focused on the outside, the physical, never doing any work on the inside, but I didn't know that I was supposed to.
Right.
So, that the work was to really kind of deep dive into why am I the way I am? Why do I feel the things that I feel? What shapes the person that I am?
Yeah.
And
to try to get to the point where your safety isn't in your house or in what's being provided, but there's an inner safety. Like you're good with yourself.
Right.
That your foundations are good and you finally get to the point where they actually can't be shaken.
But here's the thing. When you are raised with very bad foundation, in a shaky home, young home life, you don't know what a foundation is.
Well, I think that because you're not taught through example and mirroring and patterning of your environment, the other women in our life didn't show up for themselves.
Yes.
In many ways.
And that was my case. That was my story. So I had zero clue on what I'm supposed to be doing, how I'm supposed to be feeling, why I feel the way that I feel. And it was such a struggle for me. And I had no clue when people would say, well, you love somebody, you have to love yourself. And I just thought, what in God's name does that mean?
Right.
Clueless. And it's crazy to say that until I was in my early 40s, no clue what that meant. Zero. And I asked my adult children recently, do you know what that means? Because I thought I had no clue and I just kind of wanted to see where they stood.
Right.
And their answers really surprised me because in their 20s, they know so much more about self-love than I did.
Oh, that whole generation.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting it not necessarily just through social media, but there's so many avenues and it's embraced now.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't embraced in our time.
It definitely wasn't
talked
about
in our culture or our mother's time.
Yeah.
It's this evolution. But what does self-love actually mean? Have you figured out what that definition is for you?
Not totally. Again, like I said earlier, it's a journey. It's kind of day by day. Mm-hmm. I figured out that I'm not very kind to myself on a day-to-day, and I'm working on that. And I figured out why I'm not very kind to myself.
Well, that's important too.
Yeah. I figured out, all the programming when I was young. Yeah. Me and my culture, I'm half Mexican, half Cuban, Latina. You are born and bred to be perfect, to not make mistakes, to not be loud, to grow up and get married, get a husband, have a family. And you're doing all these things outside of you to be happy. You not for 1 second do you stop to figure out what makes you happy on the inside. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've been doing now, the last decade plus, figuring out what is it that makes me happy outside of all the other things that I was programmed to do.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a huge factor in being able to love oneself.
Yeah.
Like we have to go all the way back into, well, what's good for me? What's actually good for me, not good for the family, not oh, I need to do this to make this person happy, and then therefore I'll be happy.
Right.
It is a deprogramming.
It is.
And I think that our generation is really the first generation that has the ability, culturally, legally, to do that.
Yeah. And the awareness.
The awareness is huge.
Yeah.
But we're also at a time now where freedoms exist
Mm-hmm.
that didn't used to exist.
Yeah, I can't believe that.
So culturally, I'm Filipino, and I was not necessarily raised, but it was sort of the undercurrent that, you go to school, you're clean, you look presentable, but you don't talk much.
Mm-hmm.
You care for everyone else.
Yes.
That was what I took out of growing up and being in the Philippines, is that the women were there to make sure everything ran well.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't because she wanted it to run well. It's just that's the way it was.
Right.
I did not grow up with my mom being subservient to a man. She was a single mom of 5. And so I grew up with a very strong woman who went to work and did all the things.
Mm-hmm.
But I still, and I didn't realize it until you get much older and you start thinking, well, how old was she? How old am I? And what was she like at that age?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you start going backwards because you're going through your own stuff. And she put the family first.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned. I think it wasn't even until my mom retired, and even a little bit after that, because she was still helping caregive some of her grandchildren, that she didn't have peace.
Mm-hmm.
So like 77, 75, 77. That's crazy.
That
My
is
mom's
crazy.
85 now, and I just think, oh, I'd have been long dead. Because I'm finding peace now, but I'm
Yeah.
not 50.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't. I can't, because we were talking about this earlier. When did we start this journey?
Yeah.
When did we start to feel
Yeah.
this need to really look within? Do I really love myself?
And
Do I
does it
even
only
know what that
happen
is?
In midlife?
Yeah. Do I even know what that is? Right.
Right.
So, going into that part of it, for me, it happened because I had a really terrible health crisis.
Mhm.
And I didn't even know that I was missing something. I didn't know, I was just chugging along, doing life,
Yeah.
being a wife, being a housewife, being a mom, taking care of my kids. I was a stay-at-home mom, running our business from home, part of it.
Mhm.
And I didn't even know that there was anything wrong.
Yeah, you didn't know there was anything else.
No, you're so distracted. You just kind of keep going with what you know.
So what happened when you had your health crisis?
Well, I had to stop and think, because I was basically bedridden for almost 10 months.
So that's all you could do.
All I could do was lie in bed and think. I couldn't do anything. And aside from my body being in terrible pain, my mind and my soul started to just feel so much pain and anguish, because I started to see I'm not happy. And it has nothing to do with anybody in my life
It's
or
just that
anything outside of me. Yeah, it has to do with me, because I got to be alone with me in the quiet for 10 months. No distractions, because I couldn't do anything other than lie there and just think and think and think. And let me tell you, that was hard.
Oh, I bet.
That was really difficult, but I'm so grateful that happened to me, because I woke up of the dream that I was in. I was asleep. Like that inner part of me that's so just aware now was asleep.
Did you find that it was in the dead silence, was your soul hurting?
Yes.
Were there emotions that came up?
Absolutely.
And then you had nothing
Yeah.
to distract yourself, but to actually take a look at them.
That's exactly what happened. I could have said it better. Thank you. But that's exactly what happened. Things from my past, things from my childhood. We don't realize that the person that we are right now in this moment is because of the experiences that we've had in our past,
And so we
because
have
of
to be
everything
grateful
we've
for
been
it.
through. Yeah. And for the most part, I think most people don't realize that, I think, in our generation.
Sure.
Because you're just, like I said, you have this mission as a Latina woman, look your best, find a man who wants to marry you, have a family, and then you've done it. That's your mission. You've completed your mission in this life.
Yeah.
But you never stop to think about all the things that you've gone through and how they've affected you, and later on affect your relationship
Absolutely.
with your partner.
with your kids,
the way you become, the kind of mother that you are.
Yes.
Yeah, I never stopped to think about everything that I had been through in my life. And there was a lot of pain there. And I started to like look into that and think about it. And then I met you, thank God. And you were treating my physical pain, but in all that came all the emotional, the emotional therapy and all the
stuff that came
spiritual stuff. Yeah.
And the next solo is about where and how we hold emotions throughout the tissue.
Yeah.
My hands sort of speak body. So it was just really relaying the messages of your body and bringing them up and saying into a verbal sense so you could percolate and think about it.
Yeah. Which again, no clue that the physical you could feel in the emotional eventually if you ignore it long enough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I had been in pain for years, but I could completely ignore it. I was still functioning. And then I wasn't until it all just kind of came crumbling down. But I really think a lot of women, maybe men, but I want to say mostly women, we just don't stop and think about ourselves and are we really happy? Or maybe we do and you think I'm not happy and you blame exterior things. Mm-hmm. The person you're with, you want to lose weight, you're not making enough money, you want a better house. You just think it's something outside of you. And I'm here to tell you, it's usually not.
No, because you get there, you get that better job or you upgrade to a better house. And you know what? Yeah. Wherever you go, there you are. All the same stuff comes with you.
Exactly.
And then you think, well, what if I do this?
Right.
What if I lose weight? What if I
something outside of you?
Get a different husband?
Yeah.
It all follows you.
Exactly.
So don't do anything to change your physical, your outside. Mm-hmm. Go deep within.
Yes.
Do the work within. And the rest of it, it just sort of takes care of itself.
It does. It starts to all fall in place and you start to see things more clearly.
Right. I would say my wake-up call was, and I've talked about this in early on in the previous solos, I was so burned out. I think it was just coming out of COVID. And I actually, whether it's, what do you call it, the necessity workers.
Mm-hmm. Essential.
I was an essential worker. But the thing was I treated one patient at a time and I had my own clinic. So I didn't close. Mm-hmm. I just, you clean everything and people who were comfortable came in and I was busier than I'd ever had been because people wanted to come in. So I didn't realize I was, seeing 8 people back to back and wasn't great at home where everybody here was staying up till 3 and getting up at 3 and me being at work. I couldn't manage any kind of schedule that I would have preferred to have here. I hit a breaking point where I don't know if it was my arm. I think my arm was going. I was getting like tendonitis. And so I'd have to like bring my arm up onto the table like this and treat with this one. And so I finally called it. I said, okay, my mind, body, and soul are all broken and I'm not sure I can return. So I've never done this, but I took a month off work.
I remember.
I just took like a January sabbatical. It was actually 6 weeks because I usually take the last 2 weeks of a year off for the holidays. And I just sat with myself.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of watching the household or relationships and how I would react or not react or get resentful or blame it on something outside of me.
Yeah.
And that didn't start my journey, but it gave me some space to really gain some clarity so that coming out of that, I started making changes everywhere.
Yeah.
In the name of self-nurture and self-preservation and loving myself. You hit that point where I think I was probably 49. You're doing all this. You're doing business. You're bringing the money. You're trying to make sure the house stays stable and all the bills are paid and everybody gets all their needs met.
But you're empty inside.
But I wasn't doing anything to get my own needs met. And, you get a little mad at first because why isn't anybody doing anything for me?
Right.
Well, your whole life, you've never asked anybody. So they think you're fine. That's just you.
Yeah.
And so learning how to find your voice and asking, whether it's doing it within yourself and making changes so that you're doing that for yourself, but also asking other people around you or telling them the things that you need.
Yeah.
I don't think that women do that enough. And then we live in a little bit of resentment because I never told you.
Right.
I might bitch a little bit because, you don't do the chores or you don't help the dishes but the deeper needs.
Right. And again, it goes back to there are women our age that don't even know what those deeper needs are because we're so out of touch with that self-love because we've been so busy all of our lives, doing the stuff we think we're supposed to be doing, not what really feeds our soul.
Right.
And I find that incredible even now because I still have friends in their 50s that have no idea what I'm talking about when I talk about it, and I just thought this is a good topic.
I've experienced that
for midlife.
Yeah. At some point when you're ready to hear it,
Mm-hmm.
the aha will come on and you'll say, that's it.
Yes.
That's what I'm missing. And so don't be sad if you don't get it, but just hear the words that self-nurture leads to self-love.
Yeah.
Leads to self-empowerment.
Yes.
But really that's where true happiness, and I don't know, happiness is a feeling, but it's the peace.
The peace.
It's where the peace lives.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm always kumbaya all day.
No, absolutely not. No.
It's being able to bring yourself back to your baseline.
Yes.
But like we were talking about, you have to form a foundation for that.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And it's a foundation of self, which I think that we're trying to instill more in the younger generation, and they're trying to find it themselves.
They are, thank God.
Yeah, it's just that
sooner than us, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm so grateful.
Yeah, so great.
It makes me feel like I did something right as a mom.
Yeah.
When I asked my kids, do you know what that means? And their answers surprised me because at their age, I would not have answered that. I had no clue.
Well, that's not that.
They're there.
So because you started doing your work over the last 10 years.
And I talked to them a lot about it.
That they've been able to self-reflect.
Yes.
Because you're talking about your journey.
Yes.
Or telling them what they need or what they need to do. It's different because I think the previous generation, our mothers would just sort of tell us things.
Yeah.
But the conversations that we have with our kids and just allowing them to have emotions and to feel however they're feeling, because there's no right or wrong. It's a feeling, and then process it. But holding space for that,
yes,
and holding space for that while sharing the parts that are appropriate of your journey with them,
yes,
I think is invaluable to our kids. So don't just try to do it on your own. It's not that someone has to do something in order for you to continue on your journey. It's just a sharing moment. It shows them that we're human, that we don't have it all figured out. As they get older, they do realize we don't have it all figured out, but it's often an anger. But if you open those conversations up and share that, hey, I'm really struggling with this, but not in a way that they don't feel safe anymore.
Right.
It's just that,
you just show them your humanity, that you're not perfect, that, at your core, I'm just a woman that became a wife and a mother. And I've just gone along my life doing the best that I can with what I have.
Yeah.
And, I think I did pretty good, considering what I didn't come in with.
Yeah. And I think that our kids, they have more compassion for not only their own family members going through their own things, but then that sort of spreads into the world.
Yeah.
And if we can have more compassion and kindness and self-love, the world will be such a better place.
Yes. Agreed.
And so you just have to keep going on a journey little by little. As the frequency changes, it will get softer.
Yeah.
People will have, I hope, less judgment overall, but it starts with not judging yourself.
Yes.
Right?
That's huge.
You don't see.
That's huge. I lived judging myself.
Well, you don't see all the criticalness that you would be critical in others.
Yeah.
When you're not being critical to yourself.
Right.
Like, when I'm not fat shaming or I'm not, my hair, it's like outside you're looking at everyone's hair and you're looking at how everyone's weight is and you're like, well, I'm not as big as that person or this. And it's horrible because this is an internal dialogue.
Yeah.
But really it just comes from you not being happy with yourself.
Exactly.
And so turning that onto what's going to make me happy.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily losing the weight. It's your relationship with food and exercise and how you feel inside your body. The weight will shift as you go through that. I promise you. Okay. Well, let's go back because I think many women can not appreciate that they understand this part. It's what does a lack of self-love look like and how does it show up in relationships?
Well, again, I think I'll go back to what I said right before my health, just took a nosedive. I think I can say I had it all. I was in my early 40s. I was very fit. We had just added on to our home. So it was much bigger, much nicer. Our business was booming. My kids were thriving. Our marriage was good. But I felt like there was something missing. And I started to think it has to be something outside myself. Is it my marriage? Is it, could our business make more money? Should we have just bought another house instead of adding on to this one? My kids aren't straight A students. Is it my fault? I mean, I was just looking outside of myself, and it was all inside of me. So thank God that I started to do all this internal work, because I would have started blaming my marriage. I would have started thinking my kids aren't doing well enough and I'm doing something wrong, so let me push them harder. It would have come from a place of, not from inside, but a place of try to fix it on the outside, and you can't fix the outside.
It's the fixing energy.
Yes.
Right? If I fix it, I'll feel better.
Yeah.
If I fix it, it's something outside of you. If I fix it,
Yeah.
it's that you get that sort of ping of dopamine or validation.
Yeah.
All my kids are straight A students.
Right.
Not just because they were born smart and have figured out tools, but it must be because I'm doing something right.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case, because many of us have not straight A students.
Mm-hmm.
And our kids are still intelligent. It's just they need to learn their own tools in their own time.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to fall on their faces too. And we have to allow that without thinking that I did something wrong.
Right. And again, that's where it affects your relationships. And we're talking about that, right? So, I mean, it affects every relationship, friendships, marriages, the way you interact with your kids. And again, so grateful that it happened at a time in my life where I was starting to feel just unfulfilled. Mm-hmm. And I realized that in those 10 months where all I could do was think, that it wasn't anything outside of me. It was everything inside of me. And all the pain that I was in from my past.
The lack of self-love. Think
Yes.
about all the things that you did to sort of get there. It's people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
We can all relate to that. And not even putting yourself in the equation. It's not even last.
Yeah.
Other than, oh, do I look nice today? But
Yeah.
something that you would do nice for yourself, like taking a day off or, reading a book, all of those internal nurturing,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not even on the radar.
No.
And it's so sad. I think we abandon our own needs because we whether we were taught or we just assumed, or it's in your personality, your character, that everybody has to be okay first.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there's anything left, I'll do that. I'll do something for myself.
And there's usually nothing left.
No, there's nothing left. Because we could always keep
Mm-hmm.
going to find another thing to fix outside of
Right.
ourselves. Because I think part of that is it's an unawareness, but a little bit of it is it's a little scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little scary to stop and say, I'm not going to fix anything outside of myself because I need to go within.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, it's different for everybody when that point hits.
Right.
It could be a health crisis, like
Yeah.
you said. It could just be like, I'm done. I absolutely can't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have to be. Like if you increase your awareness as you go,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be this terrible thing that happens.
Yeah.
And then you have to look at yourself.
No, of course not. And then when you say going within, I think that's also something that people don't understand. What does that mean? What are we talking about? It's different for everybody. For me, it was just getting more spiritual, just connecting to that part of me that I had disconnected from for most of my adult life. Because I think I said this in another episode, I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I went to private school, Catholic school, my entire scholastic career.
Mm-hmm.
I went to church twice a week from first grade to 12th grade. And I'm not going to say that I was reading the Bible every day, but I was used to praying and going to church and just being connected to God. As I got older and I became a mom and life got a little bit harder and I got distracted, I disconnected from that part of me. Yeah. And I realized that's what I was missing. That's what going within was for me, to connect with the spiritual side of me. And I'm saying spiritual now because for me, it's not about religion. It's not about going to church. It's not about being in a building with other people and a priest. I connect to God when I'm by myself and I just pray and I'm just still. And I hadn't done that probably since my first child was born, because I was so busy trying to be a perfect mom, perfect wife, perfect homemaker. I could go on and on. You know what I mean? And that's what it means for me. It's different for everybody. And I think that's why it's hard to explain doing the work. The work for me was reconnecting to that spiritual part of me.
And was it just in that search for the spiritual connection with God? Was it asking yourself a lot of questions?
Yeah.
Was it challenging yourself?
Yes.
Some of your, I would say, belief systems.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And to have to admit to myself that what I believed was wrong because it wasn't getting me what I wanted, which was peace and happiness with my relationships. Yeah. That's really difficult to look at it and think, I've been thinking about this wrong. But, you know, that's the work and it's hard. And sometimes that's why people kind of start the journey and then stop because they think, yeah, this is dumb. I'm going to go back to what I know.
Well, I think it gets really hard because it gets really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
When you start that journey and the wake up call and all of your relationships start to feel a little misaligned because your perception or your thought pattern on what it should feel like, not look like, start to change.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't feel right, you start to question the connections, or all the foundations of whatever it was you built.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. You can't tolerate certain patterns anymore. And I have no idea where it comes from. It's not just like, well, we're not going to do that. It's like you can't possibly do things a certain way anymore because you've had this wake up call.
Yeah.
The connection to your spirit.
Yeah.
Meaning it's okay to love yourself. It's okay to not allow people to speak to you a certain way or treat you a certain way. And you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Even if you wanted to.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I pick and choose when you grant grace, but in general,
yeah.
Like we were just talking about the kids and, you know, when kids don't respect their parents, I say, oh, well, my kids may not like me all the time, but I know they always respect me.
Absolutely.
Because of those certain boundaries. But then it starts to get gray, whether it's with your kids or relationships, work, where when we get into this people pleasing or seeking validation from the outside, we want someone to like us or have someone to think we're great.
Yes.
We start compromising, or maybe we don't even have boundaries yet. So you haven't even put them in place because you're getting something out of it, which is a quick fix of a validation. Right. And you have no idea what they're really even thinking of you. Because again, think about it, like your kids are always going to love you no matter what. But if they don't respect you, that's like big. That's when I don't think I'm doing my job.
Right.
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 Because they're younger, they're dumber, they don't know. We're supposed to like have I call it bumper logic with, like, think about bowling. So when they're little, you put those rails up and they just pitter along and they'll eventually hit a pin or whatnot. Yeah. That's the job of a parent for me. And as they get older, the lane starts to widen, but you still have the guardrails up until they get to a certain age and the guardrails come down and now it's all them. But those guardrails isn't normally pleasant for them because they're going to push the boundaries.
Yes.
Just naturally. And some of it's subconscious to see if, let me test them because I want to see if they love me enough to not let them treat me, a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get to a point where you can no longer tolerate a certain pattern, but you have to be willing to do the work gently to change it. You can't just be like, we're not doing this anymore.
Right.
It has to be, how can I say that differently so I can get a different response? What gentle thing do I need to put in so that there's a boundary for me so we don't have to fight, right? That's where the peace comes from after.
Yeah.
Right? And then people start to shift around you because, they'll test it over and over.
Yeah.
And then after a time, they can't go past that. They have to also sit back, redirect, and think about how they're going to connect within that conversation or the relationship with you. And so that's where don't worry so much about how the other person's going to react or what they're going to do because you're doing this. It takes care of itself as long as you're strong within your own boundaries of what you deserve.
And as long as that the foundation of those relationships that already exist are there, nothing bad's going to happen to that.
No.
It will survive. It'll actually thrive. That's what I found.
It will thrive.
I have found
your situation.
Yes,
I think that
I have found that my marriage, my relationship with my kids, the friendships that I have are so much better since I started this whole
And it just
Again, I hate to say
reshapes.
journey because it sounds corny, but I can't think of another word because it is a journey because it's
a journey.
ongoing.
It's always ongoing.
Yeah.
It will never end. It will always
Yeah.
fine tune and shift and go, oh, I didn't really ever think about it that way.
Like we don't have it all figured out. We're figuring
And
it
different
out.
times of life
Yeah.
will require different types of resilience and fortitude and flexibility, right?
Yeah.
So for me, and you guys all know that I've been divorced for maybe almost 4 years now, and we have a great relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened to that is like we just didn't fit. And so when I stopped resenting him for being someone he's not, or all the things that aren't getting done, when I let all that go, there was a place of peace, knowing that I couldn't stay in the marriage because that wasn't the partnership that I could do or I could be in.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also the father of my kids and just came over on Friday and we all had dinner. Like, we're in a really good place.
You are. You guys are great.
And I feel it's healthy.
Yeah.
And I mean, even the process of divorce was really centered around the kids and making sure that he's still family.
Right.
It's just a partnership.
Yeah.
And so that's the other side. Marv's relationship grew and actually got stronger.
It's funny. Right now you said, before I forget, you said you were resenting him for what you wanted him to be.
Yeah.
I was feeling that same resentment in my marriage, but with all the work and that deep dive, I realized he was always who I wanted him to be.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
It's very interesting.
Yeah. I realized, no, I'm not who I want to be. He's fine. He's always been the same person.
Yeah.
It's me. I wasn't happy with me.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't that interesting how
it's so interesting.
Yeah.
For me, we didn't get married till I was 30.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
we got married young.
I don't think I had laid the foundation for myself in my 20s.
Yeah.
I had put my head down and I was working really hard and I'd started business really early. And so I didn't do any of that self-work in my 20s. And having a mother that, there wasn't a dad or man in the house.
Yeah, me neither.
So I just didn't know. I didn't think about it.
Yeah. Well, we didn't know.
Right.
It goes back to what is self-love? Do you know? It goes back to that. We didn't even know that we were supposed to love ourselves first.
I had no self-love.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to talk about this because we didn't know. And now we know. And now it just changes everything once you figure out that you really have to do a lot of work on yourself before any relationship that you're in can be successful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and so we were talking off camera about how we were conditioned, whether it was culturally or by our mothers, right? And I kind of did a deep dive. There's some really interesting facts about, the whole, like, you need to find a man and
oh yeah, I know that.
You need to find a man. And, and you were a spinster if you weren't married by the time you were 30 and had kids.
Yeah.
And, your looks are going to fade. So you better get them in your 20s.
Hurry up while you're young. Yeah.
So in the research, and I'm going to pull it out, I have compassion for the older generations because they did pave some certain ways, but there's some things that they were conditioned as well. Mm-hmm. Because you actually couldn't survive without a man, really, until the laws came into effect in 1974.
That's insane.
Which when I was 3.
I was 4.
So to go all the way back in history, pre-1848, there was the legal doctrine of coverture, which was an English common law in the United States, colonial law. And it was basically like once a woman got married, she had no legal identity separate from her husband. This is crazy. You couldn't own property, sign contracts.
Unbelievable.
Earn or control your wages. You couldn't even earn wages. You couldn't sue or be sued. All assets, earnings, and rights were transferred to the husband upon marriage. And prior to that, it was your father's. So you still weren't really a separate being in the system. Okay.
That's incredible. So they've been doing this to us since the 1800s.
Pretty much. And before that. And that was before it. In 1848, there was a law enacted in New York, and it was called the Married Women's Property Act.
That's unbelievable.
And so it was the first law that women could retain ownership of premarital or inherited property. But here's the limitation. In reality, the husband often retained all control and management of that property. Your wages were still considered your husband's until 1860. No access to contracts or legal recourse without the husband's involvement. And enforcement was very inconsistent and it was very biased. So the practicality of that, it didn't really do much for us. Like, okay, you have this inherited property or, premarital property. It just went with you to the next man. Ugh. So think about that. And then,
that's so awful.
You couldn't even go in and get a loan, a credit card.
Yeah.
You had to have a male, usually relative. So it had to be your father, your brother, your uncle, or your husband to co-sign.
Mm-hmm.
It's really sad. Here's the other thing. So in 1974, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act came along, and it made it illegal to deny credit based on sex or marital status. And it made it illegal to require a male co-signer for women to open bank accounts, get credit cards, take out loans. That means before I was 3, my mom couldn't really open a bank account or even buy a home.
I can't believe that's in our lifetime.
It's sad.
Yeah.
But in real life, women were often denied bank accounts or car loans. They still, internal policy of banks would require the husband or the father to co-sign, even though this was in place. And, single, divorced, widowed women really faced a lot of discrimination in housing, credit, the legal systems. Women, this is a sensitive subject, but talking about redlining, because we're both considered non-white, it actually existed. Women were a category. Redlining was a discriminatory practice used by banks, lenders, and the federal government to deny loans, mortgages, or insurance to people in certain neighborhoods, primarily based on race, ethnicity, and economic status. So, very sad. The Homeowners Loan Corporation, HOLC, in the 1930s created maps, and this is what you hear in school when the kids are studying, of neighborhoods, and they would rate them from A down to D. And so internal policies, if you had, anybody of race, not even women. So if you think of women of race, you're down to the very bottom, sister.
Yeah, we're not
you were deemed high risk, right? So you would only be approved for certain neighborhoods and certain loan amounts, but oftentimes with much higher interest rates. The whole system is just a scam. So, single women were seen as financially unstable without the man.
Yeah.
Divorced women, social stigma was not okay for so many years.
So this is more than cultural. This is also, it's coming from our government.
Yes. We've
never had it easy.
No. And it was like, women were just built to be accessories.
Yeah.
So I had a conversation with my kids before this because they learned all this in school. And so I was fascinated because I didn't know any of this until I started doing research. But at least it's more common knowledge.
Right.
Nate and Luce were both spurting off like, oh yeah, and then this happened and you were basically, you weren't property, but you were just an accessory. And I was like, so no wonder
we grow up feeling the way
the evolution of it, and even our moms and the grandmothers, you did have to have a man. So it wasn't a self-worth thing, like you're nothing without a man.
Yeah.
Literally, financially, physically, you were unprotected.
Right.
It was a necessity for survival, not thriving, survival.
Right.
And so I have to have a lot of compassion for that. It was in Title IX, the beginnings of Title IX was 1972, but I was in college in the early 90s. Women's sports, particularly, didn't get equal funding till then. But in 72, the education system had to have equal funding for men and women. So even that, it's not a farce, but on paper it looks good, but in practicality, it took many, many years for these things to actually evolve. And thank God our daughters have choices.
Right.
They don't have to get married now.
My daughter absolutely does not feel she has to get married.
Mine doesn't.
I know that comes.
We're gonna have kids.
That comes partly from me, from telling her you can do whatever you want. Partly from self-love that she already has, and just society nowadays.
Yeah, and I think it's a wonderful thing that the generations coming up, particularly females, have limitless. They don't even think about having to have a man, not from a you need a man because you need a man, but even just it being it's a choice now.
Right.
They can or not, but they don't
feel
the heaviness of it.
Yeah, they didn't feel that burden that.
And I don't feel like I needed it, but that social stigma.
Yeah, I felt like I had to because of my mom.
No, my mom definitely
proud if I wasn't a wife and a mother.
Single mom, but I definitely saw her struggles.
Yeah,
and part of that was, oh, you better be able to support yourself.
Right.
That was my main thing. Picking a field where there's always going to be a job.
Yeah.
And thank God I loved it. I was able to evolve it into what I do now. But
my mom, same situation, single, struggling. And that's where she was like, you need to find a good man and get married because look at how I'm struggling because I'm alone. So again, so different where we come from, but the same thing's happening internally.
Right.
We're being told we need a man, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so, and here's a really disturbing piece of information.
Oh no, more disturbing than
this is really disturbing. Marital rape was legal in many U.S. states until the 1990s.
Lovely.
So, yeah, if a female was physically harmed or raped by her husband, it was not considered a crime, right? Because first it was you were just part of him,
right? So property,
and then it evolved into, well, if you got married, it's just a given that consent is there,
right?
1990s. That's
crazy. That is crazy.
And so to even, you feel like you need a man, but you're not very protected.
Yeah.
It's concerning to me, but I'm glad that we've seen the evolution and that we can all have more compassion for the elder generation.
I do. Absolutely. I do.
The bottom line is it wasn't a choice. It was needed for survival.
Yes.
And even being able to do any dealings in the world, it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So, grant a little grace to some of the older generations that are telling you need a man. There is a lot of social stigma. I don't think it isn't there anymore. And that can go into a whole other conversation.
I think it's not there as much. I think it's still there a little bit. I do. Maybe as a Latina, as a Hispanic, I still see it in my family.
I think that, so-and-so will get married and have kids. Mm-hmm. And I think that, probably just because I want grandkids, but none of it's not right for them.
Right. I mean, like I said, I still see that a little bit in my family. Maybe the older generations, the ones that are still around.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you learn to sort of rewire and rebuild? How did you learn to find your own identity?
It goes back again to just connecting with my spirituality. Who was I really? What did I really want out of my life? Was it everything that I already had? And realizing and finally being extremely grateful for what I had. Realizing everything I have is, yes, I did want this and this is wonderful. But more than that, it was just finding peace from the things that I had been through in my life. Just a lot of trauma, a lot of childhood things that affected who I became as an adult and the way that I just saw other people.
Well, learning how to identify your own needs.
Yeah.
Like just create a tiny little space for what do I want? Even if it's just what do I want to do today? What do I want to do in this 20 minutes? And then it grows. Right?
For me, it was just living in gratitude. That's how it started. Okay. I just started being grateful every day for everything, nothing. I'm so grateful for my dog. That dog is nothing but love. Thank you, God, for my dog who loves me. Or thank you for today that I was able to get up out of bed because there was a time where I couldn't. Thank you for my husband. Thank you for the sun today because it rained yesterday. I mean, I just started to practice being grateful because I had stopped being ungrateful for so many years. And that's where it started for me. And then it just kind of evolves after that.
Did you find that when you found gratitude in the daily life that you were able to then not move past gratitude, but add boundaries?
Yes.
To guard your gratitude.
Yes, absolutely. I know what you're saying. Because as you start to feel grateful and as you start to feel just more full, more peace,
Yes.
then you also start to realize, okay, this relationship, it's not that great. I'm very grateful for all the things that are wonderful, but I'm starting to see the things that aren't so wonderful and that maybe I need to move away from.
Yes.
So that's when you start practicing that self-love. Okay, this relationship is probably not good for me.
What?
Or this activity.
Yeah. And it becomes a form of self-respect.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So self-love and self-respect do mirror each other.
Yes, because where you might have put up with something or someone before, you're not willing to do that anymore because you know that you deserve better.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I didn't know that before.
So when you're doing your journey to self, I'll call it. Okay. But so the difference between self-soothing and self-abandonment.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that everybody knows that there's a difference.
Yes.
So you're burned out. You want to take a day. You're just going to chill and watch Netflix all night because you're overwhelmed. That's self-soothing. Self-abandonment is when you don't ever return to self-reflect why you're burnt out and frustrated. You just, okay, I got a little bit of a void, right? And I'll just go on and keep doing the same thing over and over again. And so when I get burned out, I'll just take a time out, but then I'll keep doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah. It's so unhealthy because as you do it over and over again, it takes longer and longer and longer of downtime. Yeah. In order to be able to face it again. Yes. And to me, that's self-abandonment. That's self-soothing is I'm going to take a moment and then I'm going to look at it and I'm going to make some decisions or I'm going to really reflect on how that's making me feel and why and why you're so burnt out. Yes. And what, if anything, needs to change. Yes. From a self-loving. Yes. Not a deprecating. But self-abandonment is more of I take a time out and then I just go hit my head against the wall some more. And then, I got a little bruise, I got a little headache. I'll stop for a minute and then I go hit my head against the wall a little bit. Yeah. Go back to the situation that's making you feel this way. Right. And so, that's a good way to burn out your nervous system because what will happen is that enough and taking longer and longer of the downtime will either lead to physical health crisis, mental, emotional crisis, and I would say the mental state of society is not great at the moment because I agree. They're not going anywhere. Yeah, they're not. There's too much outside stimulation and buzzing and telling you it is for you instead of asking yourself what it is. Yeah. So those are foundational things in learning to love yourself. I think it's not just you have to love yourself, but you have to learn to. Yes. And like you said, some people just don't even know that it exists. No. Or what does that mean? I didn't. Can you share an example of a specific time where you lost yourself in a relationship? I guess when my kids were very young, I lost myself in the stay-at-home mom role. Yeah. Because before that, I had a job. I was, contributing to our family at work full time. And there came a point where we had our second and it just didn't make sense to pay so much money for babysitting. And it made sense all around for me to stay home, take care of the kids. And then that's when we started our own business. So I just lost myself in, I'm the mommy and all I do is take care of my babies and they're my priority. And I forgot who I was. I forgot who I was as a woman, as a wife. I do think that's very common. Yeah, I do too. Yeah. It's the labels. Yeah. So that was hard because, I found myself when they were sleeping and I had just a moment to breathe, just thinking about the next thing I had to do with them. It had nothing to do with what can I do for myself right now so that I can recharge, re-energize, because you know what it's like to have babies. It's a lot of work. I never thought, what do I do for myself so that, when they're awake, I can give it my all again. Right. It was, what do I have to do for them before they wake up or for my husband or for my house? To make the day flow. Yeah. To make the day flow. Yeah. I can get ahead on this. Or I can throw another little laundry. Yeah. I have to defrost something for dinner. It's so much. And I think all new moms can completely relate to that. New and old. Yeah. They've been doing it for a long time. Yeah. So I did feel lost. But I don't feel that now. That's right. Yeah. It's coming home to yourself. Yeah. It's really nice. Yeah. For me, the moment I realized it, I was actually doing some energy work with a lady that I worked with often. And she said, "Who are you?" I said, "Well, I'm a mom a business owner, I'm a physical therapist. And she's like, no, those are things that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you? And I sat there and there were crickets in my head.
I get that so much.
And I burst out crying because at that moment I had realized I had completely lost myself. And I was only who I was who I was to other people, not to myself.
Yeah.
And that was huge for me. And that was a commitment of, oh my gosh, I have nothing of myself for myself, only for myself anymore. That was the moment where you have to find yourself. I could remember when I was like, I was a kid and even in my 20s, and I do this exercise quite often with people where I do the same thing if they're kind of in a moment of not crisis, but I can tell they're lost. Because I'll ask them who they are. And I've actually developed, and I'll share with you guys at some point, an exercise. And it's part of a journey back to self. It's remembering who you are.
Yeah.
Right? Not labels.
Right.
But I had crickets and it was devastating.
Yeah. And I think when you can answer that question, not what do you do, who you are, that's when you're doing the work.
Yes. And then what happens when you make your list and you start reading your list every day and you define your list of what these words mean to you, these attributes, then you can start nurturing something on that list every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's part of you. So it could be your creativity.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. So I was about to say, so let's kind of give an example. Who are you, Chrissie?
I am kind. I am compassionate. I am funny sometimes. I am intelligent. I am love. I am intense sometimes. I am beautiful.
There it is. See,
but those are the
we didn't know that.
We didn't know.
Yeah.
And when you caught me off guard like that, because we didn't pre-talk about it.
No, we didn't.
I was like, well, wait. But the first thing that comes to me is kind, compassionate. I am intelligent.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel bad. It doesn't come from ego.
It doesn't come from ego. It's who you are.
Right.
Yeah. I could answer the question too, even though we didn't prep. You know what I mean?
Okay, Marva, who are you?
I'm very creative. Thank you for asking. I'm very creative. I'm very smart. I'm a very loyal and loving person. I'm very generous. I'm kind. That's all I can think of right now. But
see how you can rattle off?
Yeah.
Where that happened, and again, crickets.
Yeah.
I had nothing.
Yeah.
And so I find when I do this exercise with people is they'll get through maybe 3, and then the silences get longer, and it's really hard to go past 6.
Yeah.
But
we didn't even know how to answer the question before.
When I would do this with people without any prompting or prepping, they usually come up with a negative first.
Okay.
And I went, well, no, they have to all be positive. They do. And I said, yes, because this is how you are. And anything positive taken to an extreme becomes negative. And anything that you find as negative, like when people say, oh, I'm totally OCD. Well, how about that is you have high focus? If you dial it back, you could find
the positive in that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what you nurture. You don't nurture I'm too focused now, I can't get out of it.
Yeah.
So it's a spectrum. And I do think that some of the qualities or who you are, I don't say change over the time because you nurture them.
Yeah. I think they do.
Right. And there's certain times of life where you can be more creative and other times where you're just, I'm getting it done. I'm a list checker today.
Yeah.
So, but knowing who you are, that's the foundation.
Yes.
Who are you?
Yeah.
So I think that's a great place to end.
I think so too. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that was a good little exercise.
Yeah.
Very impromptu. Just know that self-love isn't sexy. It isn't graceful. It's hard, and there are tears, and there are, oh my gosh, how could I have gotten to this place? And sometimes it gets to a point where I don't think it's self-hatred, but it's a lot of self-critical. How did I get here? Once you have that, what happened?
Just being honest with yourself.
And it's okay to just be honest and say, well, all these things happened to you, but now it's time to return home.
Yeah.
Right. And you cannot outsource your worthiness. You just can't. It doesn't, like Marv said, there's always going to be something missing, even if life looks perfect because you've outsourced it. Worthiness only comes from the inside.
Yes. You can't get enough stuff to feel good, to feel happy, to feel peace. It has to come from within. The stuff is what we're talking about. Possessions, people's praise, that will never give you peace and real happiness. It comes from within.
It will not. Yeah, absolutely. And so I hope that helped. And I hope I didn't ramble. Okay, so our shift has ended for today, but the conversation is just getting started. So here's your midlife reminder. Loving yourself isn't selfish. It's foundational. The more you honor your own needs, the more your relationships will rise to meet you, to meet the real you. Not the one that you think everybody wants to see, the real you. So we'd love to hear your stories. Drop a comment, send us a DM, or share this with someone who needs a little reminder to come back home to themselves. I think we are each other's reminder, not just in one instance, but on a daily, ongoing.
Yes.
And it's really important to have those people in your life.
Yes.
I'm very grateful for you, Marva.
I'm very grateful.
So until next time, stay curious, stay real, and keep shifting.
And stay tuned.